Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्. Just give me a minute. For some reason, my laptop is not opening up on Zoom. So I will read it directly. Let me see. I'm still attempting to keep it open. If and when I'm able to, I will share the screen. So yesterday we were doing verse number 55, the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas, the definition and the means. Can you be happy if you give up desires? So the difference between binding and non-binding desires. Non-binding desires are not the problem. Examples given were Krishna and Vyasa and all of them who continue to act, and no action is without desire. Yes. Yeah, just give me a second. So we were doing verse number 55. Are you able to hear them?
Yes, Di.
Yeah, okay. Sorry about the delay. My computer was getting stuck there. The definition is also the means. We've seen that. How the Sthita Prajna Lakshanas are the sadhana tools. And can you be happy if you give up desires? The difference between binding and non-binding desires. Non-binding desires not being the problem. When you're everything, what is there to be done? So this is where we'll start here. So incorrect commentaries of the Gita based on incorrect translations. Several commentaries on the Gita based on incorrect translations have created a lot of problems in understanding what is meant by giving up all desires. If this were not the case, there would be no misunderstanding because what was said originally by Krishna is very clear. When you are everything, what is there to be done? As Krishna told Arjuna in the 3rd chapter, a wise person is not bound by his or her desires and is not subject to any kind of mandate. Desires are only binding if you take yourself to be a karta, a doer. Only then do you have things to do. Only then can there be dereliction of duty. If, on the other hand, you do not look upon yourself as a karta and are awake to the knowledge of yourself, there is no question of the self being a doer. Therefore, there is no doership and nothing to be done. Lord Krishna told Arjuna that because he had no desires, he had nothing to do. Because Krishna is everything and everything is himself, what is there to be accomplished? Nevertheless, he was always active, meaning that all the activities he performed were non-binding. So once you're awake to yourself, to the knowledge of yourself, then there is no question of being a doer because there is no kartritva bhavana. If activities are non-binding, the prompting factor of activity, karma, must also be non-binding. Here in the Gita, Non binding karma is not the topic. Only binding karma is discussed. The placement of the words when, yada, and then tada in this verse is also significant. The word then comes much later, and until it comes, the force of the word when continues. When a man gives up all desires as they arise and being happy with himself in himself, only then can he be called a sthita prajna. The force of when is the same for both conditions. When he gives up all desires and when he is happy with himself in himself, depending on nothing for his happiness. Therefore, one gives up all desires arising in one's mind that are binding in nature, the desires to be secure, to be happy, to be somebody, and so on. A person who is secure with himself or herself gives up such desires naturally. The word tushta in the verse does not merely mean happiness, it implies security also. The insecure cannot be tushta happy. Therefore, one who is secure is also happy. And giving up all desires is possible only when one is happy with oneself. Thus, the definition of sthita prajna is complete. What else can be said? One who is happy with oneself is a wise person who can totally accept himself or herself because the self is acceptable. The self is perfect. It is not imperfect. Perfection means that there is no sense of imperfection whatsoever. The self is free from any sense of imperfection, and the whole creation, the whole world, the universe is non separate from the self. Because the self is complete, Purna, it cannot be improved upon. Just as the sweetness of sugar cannot be improved upon, so too the fullness of the Atma cannot be improved upon. Being awake to this fact, to that fact, the person is happy. So tushta also means security. Atmanyev atmana tushtaha. So the definition of sthita prajna is not just one who is happy with himself, he is also secure with himself. He feels complete with himself, and the self is totally acceptable. To be wise, you must have wisdom. I think we did this also yesterday. This then is the lakshana, the definition of a wise person. To be wise requires wisdom, nothing else. How a wise person walks, talks, and sits means nothing. Anyone can learn to walk in a certain way. And if the definition of a wise person is that he or she talks slowly, then everyone who talks slowly would be a jnani. The speed at which one talks or how one walks means nothing. Wisdom alone makes one wise, just as being friendly is the only way to make friends. There is no other way. Similarly, some people ask how they can develop love. All that is to be done is to love. What else can you do? You cannot discover love outside of love itself. If you want to discover more love, be loving. Create conditions that will help you discover love, conditions that are not inimical to the discovery of love. People often create certain conditions in themselves, knowingly or unknowingly, that are inimical to the discovery of love. If you avoid doing this, you will find that you are loving. think these two last lines are very important. So, create conditions that will help you discover love, conditions that are not inimical to the discovery of love. People often create certain conditions in themselves, knowingly or unknowingly, that are inimical to the discovery of love. If you avoid doing this, you will find that you are loving. This is why Gurudev says, don't hate anybody. You may not approve of them, but then the more you keep thinking about what they have done, there is a tendency to develop hatred. So create conditions that help you discover love, not conditions that create that are inimical to the discovery of love. Love is a manifestation of one's fullness. Love is nothing but the expressed form of fullness, ananda. And just as wheat flour takes on names such as bread, rolls, and muffins, so too love is subject to various forms. The different names given to wheat represent modifications of the wheat. Similarly, love is a simple emotion, which is a modification or manifestation of ananda. If you analyze love, you will find nothing but ananda. The manifest form of ananda is love. And love itself turns into such natural qualities as sympathy, compassion, and giving, depending upon the situation. And when that same love is distorted in any way, it becomes karma, leading to negative emotions such as greed, anger, depression, and so on. All of these then are nothing but one expression of Ananda, love. This is why we say love is Bhagavan, meaning that the expressed form of Ananda is Bhagavan. And what is Bhagavan? The essential form of Bhagavan is Satchit Ananda. And the expressed form of Ananda, Ishvara, the Lord, is love. The modifications of this love can be either positive or negative. Sympathy and compassion are examples of the positive modifications of love, whereas negative modifications are anger, greed, jealousy, and so on. All that is there is one Ananda, expressed or unexpressed. Unexpressed, it is the Swarupa, the very nature of fullness, which is the definition of Ananda. Expressed, it becomes love, prema. We shall see more of this definition later. So, Ananda is love is nothing but manifestation of one's fullness. The Ananda that is there expresses itself. The manifest form is love. Now, this love can be manifest either in its pure form, which is nothing but all the human values, or in a distorted way. When it becomes karma, leading to negative emotions. So, what is that that makes love distorted? Not being awake to one's nature. Coming from the space of saying, I'm insecure. Then from that avidya comes kama. So what needs to be done in order to not get love into a distorted form is to remain with that knowledge that I am full, I am secure by myself, accepting oneself. And what is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is the essential nature of Bhagavan is Satchit Ananda. And the expressed form of Ananda is love. Here, the Sthita Prajna is one who discovers the Ananda in himself or herself and knows that there is nothing other than oneself. When one says, I am the whole, it means that the person is himself or herself the fulfillment of all desires. We shall see as we proceed how the discovery of oneself and the fulfillment of all desires are not separate but identical. So the discovery of oneself is equal to fulfillment of all desires. Dukkeshvanudvignamanaha sukheshu vigatasprihaha वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते. So, dukkeshu in adversities, anudvignamanaha not affected, sukheshu in pleasures, vigatasprihaha one who is without yearning, vitaraga bhayakrodhaha one who is free from longing, fear and anger, Munihi, the wise person, Stitadhihi, one whose knowledge remains, Uchyate is said. Dukkeshu anudvignamanaha, Sukheshu vigatasprihaha, Vita raga bhaya krodhaha, Munihi stitadhihi uchyate. The one who is not affected by adversities, who is without yearning for pleasures and is free from longing, fear, and anger, is said to be a wise person whose knowledge remains. Arjuna's question, as we have seen, was answered completely in the previous verse. Being awake to yourself and in yourself alone, you discover your joy, your fulfillment. And you discover it by yourself, meaning through knowledge. And you discover it by yourself, meaning through knowledge. Without self-knowledge, you cannot discover happiness in yourself. How can you discover happiness in yourself by yourself when the self is unhappy? Generally, you are happy if your desire is fulfilled. But here, you are happy with yourself without fulfilling any desire. The nature of the Atma is free from any sense of limitation, and the person who is awake to this particular fact, the Sthita Prajna, is free from unhappiness. As desire arise in his or her mind, the person is not affected by them because of being happy with himself or herself. This then was how Krishna described the characteristics of a person of wisdom when Arjuna wanted to know how a wise person responds to the world. Even though one's response to the world does not necessarily reveal how much wisdom one has, still Arjuna thought that the spontaneous expressions of a wise person interacting in the world would reflect those values to be cultivated assiduously by a seeker and would therefore serve as a handy reference. Knowing how a wise person expresses himself or herself in the world is not for judging whether a person is wise or otherwise. It is not that we have a matrix of norms indicating the exact behavior of a wise person against which everyone is measured. It is only to know what I should follow in order to be wise. So, what we're reading is not for us to judge whether a person is a sthita prajna or not. But it is for us to follow in order to be wise. Because we normally keep judging others. So, this is certainly not for that. This is for us to know how we should live, how we should conduct ourselves, what we should cultivate. What was it that the wise person followed before becoming wise that made him or her wise and that continues as a spontaneous expression of the person? This is what Arjuna really wanted to know because the characteristics of a sthita prajna become the very means, the sadhanas, to be followed by a mumukshu. Krishna understood this to be the spirit of Arjuna's question and answered it accordingly. The threefold source of sorrow. Sorrow or pain, dukkha, has three sources: Adhyatmika, Adi Bhautika, and Adi Daivika. Adhyatmika is pain for which the source is your own body, mind, and senses from a stomachache onwards. The second source of sorrow, Adi Bhautika, are the situations around you, including the people and bugs that irritate you. Finally, Adi Daivika is the pain or sorrow caused by such things as earthquakes and lightning. The kind of pain is not created by your brother in law or anyone else, but is from a source that is absolutely divine, natural phenomena over which you have no control whatsoever. You may try to control mosquitoes with certain sprays that will destroy them, but there is nothing you can do to prevent an earthquake. Thus, while the source of sorrow is threefold, there are not different types of sorrow. Sorrow may express itself in 100 different ways: weeping, howling, kicking, moaning, and so on. But the sorrow itself is one and the same. The word dukkeshu in the verse is in the plural because the source of sorrow is threefold, as explained by Shankara in his commentary on this verse. And those whose minds are not affected or shaken by the sorrow arising from these three sources of pain are said to be wise. Because the sources of pain are always active, pain is possible for a wise person, but he or she is not affected by it. What then is the response of a wise man when his head aches? Will his head ache? Is the first question. Or let us start from the very beginning. Does he even have a head? Yes, and because the wise man continues to have a head, it may ache. Now, when his head aches, does he know it or not? After all, he is Satchit Ananda. Being Satchit Ananda, what happens when there is a headache? Does he recognize it? The verse indicates that he does by saying, when such pain occurs, the wise man is not affected. When anyone recognizes dukkha, there is dukkha for him. But what happens afterwards? The person is shaken by pain or sorrow and then he becomes disturbed. Udvigna manaha. Any disturbance from the three sources described above can make it a reality. The headache is there, you recognize it, and then you worry about it until your whole head and everything else aches. You may even become a pain to everyone around you. You were the only one with a neck pain, but you talk so much about it and make such a fuss that your pain also becomes everyone else's pain in the neck. A wise person's response to sukha. So it is not that a wise person does not have dukkha. He also experiences it, but he does not let it cause sorrow in him. So he does not become udvigna mana. He does not get disturbed by that pain. A wise person's response to sukha. What about
But
pleasure, sukha,
when
then?
dukkha is with means dukkha he is experiencing, it is up to him only. He doesn't spread it talking to others and all. Means his dukkha is limited to himself only.
Not only that it's limited to him,
Hmm.
he does not let it affect him.
Yeah,
It
correct.
does not cause unhappiness. It doesn't cause
Hmm.
sorrow in him. The pain remains pain. It does not get transformed into suffering.
Hmm. Correct. For him also it is means he is balanced.
See, because for him, love is expressed in its purest form. He is Ananda himself. He's complete in himself. He's acceptable to himself. So that expression of that Ananda that comes out in action is love. And that love is, it takes only the form of the positive human values of love, helping, caring, sharing, all of that. The love does not get distorted into anger, greed, jealousy. Why? Because he has that self knowledge. He has discovered himself. So there is no way that avidya will creep in. It is only when that avidya creeps in that karma happens. And with karma comes the horde of the negative emotions.
Was there a sentence when he knows the self, he doesn't have a
Yeah.
desires?
Yes. When he
Mm.
knows the self, that is
Mm.
fulfillment of desires.
Huh. That for fulfillment, tushti is there. Tushti word was there. Okay.
Tushta is
Hmm.
security as well
Hmm.
as,
Contentment.
yeah, that was there in the previous verse. We saw this. See, discovery of oneself and the fulfillment of all desires are not separate but identical. So there are no more desires to be fulfilled. He's just acting, he's just doing his action based on what is to be done. It is not, does not have a desire in order to be happy. He functions in the world out of happiness, not for happiness. Most of us are there, out there in the world. We do this, and this for happiness. If I do this, then I will be happy. So we continue to have the when and the then. But for a Sthita Prajna, there is no when and then. He is only happy. And from that happiness, he functions. So therefore, Dukkeshvanudvignamana. So whenever anything unpleasant happens, he is not disturbed by it. So what about pleasure, sukha? Sukha. There are people who can remain quiet when dukkha comes, but jump around like a football when something pleasant happens. The word sukheshu here refers to any happy, pleasant situation, regardless of its source, which can also be described in the same threefold manner. Sukha can come from your own sensory pleasure, some external event, or yearning for such pleasures. Sukheshu spriha. But does a wise person not laugh when something funny is happening? Yes, but there is no encore once more from the person, no longing. Recognizing both pain and pleasure, he or she is not carried away by either of them. Sukheshu vigata sprihaha, dukkeshu anudvigna manaha. This characteristic then becomes a sadhana for a mumukshu. So one of the sadhanas one of the lakshanas is to express love, to be loving. That is something that we need to cultivate. That becomes a sadhana tool for us. The second is knowing that I am complete, I am secure. And the third is sukheshu vigata sprihaha, not longing for pleasant situations and things. And dukkeshu anudvignamana, not getting disturbed or unsettled when something painful happens. Shankara in his commentary to this verse gives the example of fire. If you feed the fire with more wood, it will grow even more. Anu vivardhate. In keeping with the fuel that has been offered, it grows to become a big conflagration. When you first light a fire, it always starts as a flame. But set one match to a tank of gasoline and you have an instant conflagration. Thus, the more the fuel, the more the fire. Unlike the fire, Shankara said, the wise person's sukha resolves in himself or herself, in his or her fullness. The idea here is since there is no yearning for sukha, the person's desires do not get out of hand. Krishna also said in this verse that one who is not swept away by either sukha or dukkha is free of likes, fear, and anger. He is Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. Freedom from raga implies freedom from dvesha also. They are a pair. When one is mentioned, the other one is automatically understood to be included. In other words, they go together. The happiness of those who are not in the hands of ragadveshas is not determined by their ragadveshas. Their ragadveshas do not affect their being happy with themselves. The ragadveshas no longer have any teeth. They may be baby ragadveshas or old ragadveshas, but either way, they do not bite because they cannot bite. They can only be enjoyed. This is why the ragadveshas of the wise are referred to as non-binding. They are toothless. The absence of fear. Once raga is gone, fear also goes. Fear exists only when desire is there, and desire is there only when raga dvesha is there. Kama indicates duality. It is due to the notion, I am this much alone. Everything else is other than me, and I have to get it. Thus, there is duality, meaning that there is a difference between Jiva, the individual, and Ishvara, the Lord. Jiveshvara Bheda. Naturally, then, there will be fear because a difference between the individual and the Lord implies duality between the individual and the world. And duality between the individual and the world means duality between individual and individual. Once you accept a duality between the individual and Ishvara, you will find difference, bheda, everywhere. It's very beautifully described how the psychology of karma develops, how the science of karma is. So if you think that you are different from Ishvara, you will think that you are different from the world and from everyone else in the world. And in this world of duality, you are an insecure person. Therefore, the fear of danger from another source will always be there because the other will always be there. Fear comes from duality only. Any fear means that duality is there because you recognize the source of fear as something other than yourself. You can even be afraid of yourself if you have created a split in yourself. There is an ideal I and an actual I, and the actual I is always frightening to the ideal I. This is also the reason why you are afraid of an insane person, provided you are sane, of course. Similarly, you may find that you are afraid of a person who is sad. There can be no fear if there is only one thing, vastu. A second thing is necessary for fear to occur. Therefore, the one who has no duality is not only free from raga dvesha, but is also free from fear. Anger also goes. Lastly, a wise person is free from anger, which is nothing but another form of raga. The desire itself is transformed into anger. First, the desire is in a very benign form, and then it is transformed into another form, an ugly form called anger. We will be seeing this later in the chapter. Kamat krodha abhijayate. When what I want is not accomplished due to some obstruction, that very kama turns into anger, whose target is the obstruction. Whatever is obstructing my desire becomes the object of my anger. Many murders take place because the object of a person's love becomes the object of his or her anger. A man does not kill the loving woman, he kills only the obstinate, unwilling woman, and then he will cry for the loving one. Thus, when a person becomes an obstruction to your desire, that same person becomes the object of your anger. Anger is always a mutilated, transformed, deflected form of karma. Therefore, if you are free of karma, desire, you will be free of krodha, anger. Duality and fear. The word bhaya, fear, was put between the words raga and krodha. Vita raga bhaya krodha, right? Stitadhir muni ruchyate. So, because of its special significance, which is dealt with very well in the Shastra, the only way to be free of fear is by swallowing duality. And you cannot swallow duality unless there is no duality. And because there is no duality, it can be swallowed, but only through knowledge. This is the only way of getting rid of fear. Wherever there is duality, there is fear. Fear of mortality, fear of being put down, fear of being small, fear of not making it, and so on. Fear can exist only as long as there is a seeker-sought relationship, the very relationship implying duality between the seeker and the sought, and in the final analysis, duality between oneself and the Lord. Any small division whatsoever is enough to cause fear. Even to say Ishvara is everything and I am part of him is enough. In fact, upon analysis, you will find that this concept is the very point from which everything becomes different. This difference is born out of a natural lack of inquiry, avichara, or non-thinking. And if after inquiry, duality is still there, it is a tragedy. Because the Upanishads expect this kind of thinking or non-thinking, they address the topic thoroughly, pointing out that as long as there is any division whatsoever, fear cannot be avoided. So, Ishvara is everything and I'm part of him is also implying duality. Whereas saying, I am Ishvara, that seals Advaita. That seals the duality and it brings in that Advaita. A Muni is a thinking person, a person of inquiry, and the knowledge dhi of the Muni stays sthita. That is, it does not swing and sway. The Muni does not think duality, Dvaita, one day, and non-duality, Advaita, the next, just because someone has put forth a cogent argument. In fact, Dvaita is not knowledge, it is a belief. Regardless of the number of objections raised, Advaita is something you know. You may not be able to communicate it to someone else, but you know because it is yourself. It is not something you have to believe. It is a freedom from all notions. Advaita is all that is there. We have seen that the person whose knowledge stays is called a sthita prajna, a wise person. Sannyasi is also a word to point out jnana nishta, one whose knowledge is firm and abiding. This word was brought in by Shankara here because he did not think that one could be a jnani without being a sannyasi. As we proceed, we shall see that Shankara's sannyasa is always jnana, nothing less. So let's just pause here. We'll share our thoughts before we go on to the next verse. Dukkeshu anudvignamanaha sukeshu vigatasprihaha vita raga bhaya krodhaha stitadhihi muniruchyate. So further sadhana tools are Dukkeshu anudvignamana. All this is fine as long as we are discussing this. But then when you step out, the mind gets so overwhelmed. And see, that is why that knowledge needs to be steady, that jnana nishta. Otherwise, we are no better than yo-yos. And that is what is happening. So cultivating that inner capacity to remain undisturbed. That is where the, the importance of Shama, Dhamma, Uparama, Titiksha. All the four pillars of knowledge. So the more and more you cultivate them and you strengthen them, and you're following what the Shastras say, as in the Vedanta, pursuing Vedanta, then that self-knowledge will become stitadhihi. Because knowledge cannot be firm as long as one is riddled by raga, dvesha, and bhaya. So you start working from one end, the other end is achieved. The practice of santosha, contentment. Yeah, everybody also share.
You so rightly said to see yourself as God, Bhagwan,
And that really helps to see, to some extent, or maybe fully, to see God in others.
Very beautiful. So we'll stop here today. There's no more sharing. It's a very important verse for sadhaks, because this is where we get caught up in the quagmire of sukha and dukkha, the pairs of opposites. They're so caught up. And then we always look at the world as different from me. And very beautifully, Swamiji spoke of how Ishvara, you see, Ishvara is different from you. I am small, Ishvara is all compassion. The fact remains that you are all compassion. It's just that avidya is there. That is what needs to be removed. So Ishvara is love, love personified. So what do you have to do in order to discover love? Just be loving, no matter what, no matter how the other person is. Can you just be loving? So often we find there is someone's behavior is not according to our liking. Again, the karma comes in. And then we start judging that person, and that person triggers anger within us. But are you able to expand your nature and be loving to them, irrespective of how they treat you or behave with you or say things? So that if you can raise yourself to that level, then you would have taken care, you would have been that dukkeshu anudvignamana. And then vita raga bhaya krodha.
Dee, here I had a question. Even if they are wrong or telling lies, we behave in the same fashion of showing love to them.
Love is an inner expression, right? Inner attitude. If something needs to be corrected, you would do that. You would educate and then just ignore.
Okay. And but lovingly, I mean,
Lovingly.
being
Yes,
polite. Yeah.
yes.
Thank you.
Again, see, depends. Sometimes we may have to show anger, but not become angry ourselves. These are all indications that Gurudev has given. So, in this world, you cannot be all lovey-dovey all the time. No, sometimes you have to express anger, express it, but without losing that inner calm. All this does not mean, being loving does not mean you want to be a pleasing person. Sometimes we end up, hurting ourselves by wanting to please others. We're not going that road. We're just being loving, as in there is no hatred within, no dislike of any person within. Hate the sin, but not the sinner. But what happens when our desire is obstructed? The anger is directed to the person who obstructs it. Then we end up in this hate cycle, dislike and hate cycle. That is not what is being said here. So in the world when we live, when we have to correct something or when we have to point out something, it's important to point out and then just let go. Because the world, we are not here to make the world perfect. The world will continue with its pairs of opposites, no matter what. We are here with that sole purpose of discovering ourselves, our true nature.
So profound.
Because what Swamiji said once was, you take care of yourself, the world will be a happier place. If you're going out to correct the world, correct people around, then without taking care of yourself, that is, you can correct the world, no doubt. It's not like you should be a doormat to everything. When you have to point out certain things, you just very well point out. But then don't leave your central goal, the focus. The focus is yourself. I think somewhere he's talked about husband and wife. The wife wants the husband to be in such a way, the husband also has a similar view of the wife. But if the wife or the husband just takes care of themselves, if they are able to feel secure from within, that relationship will be beautiful. The problem is we're always wanting to fix things outside of us, not letting, not focus, not looking within. Within we have a lot of kalmasha, we have a lot of um, impurity. Without purifying yourself from within, you want to purify the world outside, does not work. You'll end up only in frustration. So being loving within, then you go about. Accept yourself first. Be secure, completely happy and full within. Yeah. So we'll stop here today. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat Shri Krishnarpanamastu. Jai Gurudev.
Meditation is accepting this moment, living every moment totally with depth. Let us keep our spine erect and body relaxed and eyes closed. Relax your shoulders. Keep a big smile on your face. You're sitting like the statue of Buddha, very serene and with a serene smile on your face. Relax your body. Let's take a deep breath in and breathe out. Become aware of your chest region, throat and chest region. If you notice some tension in the body, just let it be. Accept those parts of the body where you feel a tension. The other parts are in comfort. Other parts are at peace. Become aware of that also. There are many good things about you and inside of you. Acknowledge them. They will never leave you. And the negative aspect you may see in you is never going to stay with you forever. They are all guests for some time. Let them be. Sit with the total acceptance of yourself the way you are at this very moment. Total acceptance of what is now here lead us to deeper meditation. Let go of all the efforts. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let go of all your effort and be in this emptiness. And slowly and gradually become aware of body and surroundings. And you may gently open your eyes.